Good afternoon. It's February the 16th, the year 2001. I'm Mayo Livingston, and this afternoon Tom Bush and I, on behalf of Southwest Georgia Regional Library, are interviewing John Casagrande with relation to his experiences in World War II. John, tell us when you first joined the Army and where you were and where you went from there. I believe you said you were in Baltimore.
I was working in a shipyard just outside of Baltimore. That was in 1942. And I learned that I could get into the Army Air Corps cadet program if I could pass the tests. I had been taking flying lessons at Logan Field there in Baltimore, Maryland. And so I went and took the test, and I qualified. First place we went from there was to Miami Beach, Florida. We were billeted in a hotel right on the beach.
Tell us about that train ride.
The ride from Baltimore down was in an old, rickety old wooden car train with a coal engine pulling it. And when we got to about South Carolina, it started to get pretty hot and muggy. So we opened the window. Oh, wrong thing to do. All the cinders from the coal-burning engine came in the window, so we had to close it.
How old were you, John?
I was 19, about a year out of high school. And we got to Miami Beach, and we were billeted in a hotel right on the beach. And then we started some more exams, written exams, physical exams. Then we did our marching and training, like basic training. When we got through with that, we had to pass another test. And those we passed went on to Buchanan, West Virginia, to college detachment. And we spent about 60 days there brushing up on math and a few other subjects. Those that qualified then went from there to classification center at Knoxville, Tennessee. Knoxville, Tennessee, yeah.
Knoxville and Nashville. Was it Knoxville? You meant
Knoxville, I think it was. Later we went to Nashville. We took a series of tests there, and they classified you either as a pilot trainee or a bombardier trainee or a navigator. Well, I qualified again for pilot training. Then I went from there to Nashville, Tennessee, which was Maxwell Air Force Base, which was the Army Air Corps cadet training base. There, it was more or less officer training type operation. And when we left there, I went to Avon Park, Florida. I went there for basic training in the PT-17.
BT-13, wasn't it 13?
No, that
Was
wasn't.
it 17?
No, this was primary training in the PT-13.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm getting mixed up in the airplanes. We qualified there again.
That's when you learned to fly.
Right, that's when we got into the biplane, the PT-13. Anyway, PT-17 ran. And I think about a third of the class washed out there. Anyway, I qualified again, and I went to basic school, the BT-13, at Carpenter Field, Macon. There again, it was the same routine. You had to re-qualify. So I made it through that, and then went on to advance at Napier Field, Dothan. And been there a week before I had to leave on emergency leave. Dad had died, and there was a couple of younger children that he attended to. I had an older brother who was in the 101st Airborne, and he was in England at that time. So we arranged for his wife and one child to move in with my little brothers and sister, and which they did a fine job of raising them, getting through high school and whatnot. Anyway, I went back to Naperfield, and I was behind in the class. Of course, I had really put out to catch up to the operation, and I managed to get through. I was graduated as a flight officer, a potential fighter pilot. Little did I know I'd end up in gliders.
Well, you wanted to be a fighter pilot?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to be, and that's what I trained to be when I graduated. I was supposed to go from there to gunnery school, but I had lost 15 hours of flight time. So when the class moved on, I had to stay there and make up that 15 hours in the TSA. I sat there as a check pilot for a while, checking students. And then shortly after that, I was sent to Bainbridge, Georgia, where I was primarily test flying BT-13s after they came off the production line maintenance.
Well, now, were you, you'd got your wings by then?
Yeah, the wings and
And you,
blue bar.
for being you were a flight officer?
Right. And I was in pilot school, waiting for an assignment somewhere. And the only assignments at that time coming in were B-29 trainees.
What year was this now?
1944, in the spring of 44. And I didn't care anything about getting into B-29, so I just hung around a little while longer. And they put a sign up on the bulletin board one day that immediate assignment overseas, anybody who wanted to volunteer, single or multi-engine. Well, I thought, I'll take a crack at that. The war is moving on, I'm going to miss out on it. I'm going to go somewhere. So I left there and went to Maxton Field in
Montgomery?
No, in Carolinas,
Okay.
near Pope Field, Carolina. And that was a troop carrier base. Well, I thought, well, that's better than B-29s to me. I'd rather fly a C-47.
And that,
great.
Up to that time, nobody had said anything about
Glider, no.
Right.
They never mentioned glider. I saw the C-47 and I said, well, I got a brother in the 101st Airborne, maybe I'll cross trails with him somewhere. And first thing you know, they took us down the flight line and there's a bunch of gliders. Well, you men are going to check out in gliders. So we got checked out in gliders. So many
They
days.
didn't ask you, they
No,
just said,
no,
we're
they
going
said, this is what you volunteered for. Anyway, we had so many day landings and so many night landings. And,
in the glider.
Yeah. And went through a snatch where you buzz on down, pick up a glider off the ground, and pull him up into the air. And we qualified on that.
And did you qualify as a pilot of the C-47 and also as a glider pilot?
We were flying co-pilot, getting checked out in the C-47 as well. And I think we were there 30 days. And lo and behold, they issued us a carbine and a .45 automatic and all the ammunition we carry, and off we went to port of embarkation in New York. We got on the Queen Mary and went from there to Liverpool, England, And overnight we went to Stone, England, which was a pilot or air crew replacement depot.
So this is somewhere still about November.
This was in
Fourth.
early part of November. We got there about the 6th of November.
Normandy had already had, D-Day was already behind us.
Right. And we had, I guess we were just there overnight, and some C-47s and troop carriers came in and picked us up and carried us to Chateau Dun, France. That was where I would be based for the rest of the war. And we immediately began flying C-47s. We forgot all about the gliders. First flight was a flight to Liverpool in England, pick up quality material and take it back to Chateau Dun. And the second one was to London to take some patients to a hospital there. And while I was still not into any combat operation, I had a weekend in Paris, which turned out pretty interesting. Me and one of my tent mates, Fred Ellendorf, we were wandering around down there in what place they call Pig Alley, which was the show section, entertainment section of Paris. And there was a big church, a white church on top of a hill. We could see it from down where we were. And it was Sacred Heart Church. It's a more or less tourist objective. And anyway, we started up the hill, walking. Got about halfway up, and we could see down below. It was getting dark. But up ahead, up the church, the sun was still shining on the church, and it stood out like a beacon in the top of the hill. Anyway, we could hear the music of the sidewalk cabarets down below, and the lights blinking. Well, they won out, so we went down, back down to the cabaret section.
You didn't go to church?
No, we didn't get to the church. Later on, I got to Notre Dame Church on another visit. We visited Notre Dame Church. Anyway, at this time, we went back down and we went to Bulge, which is one of the main tourist attractions in Paris. And of course, anybody in the army that had passed to Paris went to the Bulge. After we saw the show, then we ran into a couple of young ladies that were coming out of college there. And we got talking with them, and we asked them if they wanted to go to lunch or dinner. And they said, yeah, we know where we can get some good steaks. So they took us to a black market restaurant around in an alley somewhere. And we had some steaks. And at that time, $20 was pretty good money. But we had to pay $20 a plate for the steaks, which was okay with us.
Well, when did you hit when you were in England is when you heard the first buzz bubble?
On one of the trips to England, when we went to take the patients to the hospital there, we were billeted in the American embassy building. And the building had a great big bay window on one side. And I heard this pop, pop, pop sound. What is that? I looked out the window and a buzzball went by just about rooftop level. Seconds later, 4 more went by. They almost bracketed the hotel. I told Alan was with me, one of my tent mates. I said, Alan, I'd be glad when we get back to Chateau Dun. I think it's safer there than it is here. Then my first experience in combat, of course, was during the Battle of the Bulge. It's written in my records as Ardennes campaign. And this was in the C-47, and we were carrying fuel to some tanks, and a unit was cut off on a northern rim of the Bulge. And we made a successful landing. We didn't have too much ground fire getting in there. On one occasion, one of the C-47s got stuck in the middle of the field. We were landing in any pasture that was big enough to get into. Anyway, one of the C-47s got stuck in the middle of the field, and the one behind it came up and chopped his tail off. So that was one of the first casualties that I witnessed. And
You flew every other day?
yeah,
Train.
we were scheduled every other day because they had plenty of pilots. So no one had to fly every day. And we were busy keeping the forward units supplied either by air drop or air landing in the pastures. We lost one airplane on the ground from mortar fire. There were enemy mortar crew close enough to load them into the field. So one airplane wasn't lucky, he got hit. However, the crew were not injured. And let's see what we
I
did.
believe you said you lost 7 altogether.
Yeah, during the Battle of the Bulge, our squadron lost 7. Now there were more losses, of course, in other squadrons. There were 4 squadrons at our field, and a lot of them had some hairy experiences.
Well, had you heard from your brother who was in the 101st?
No, I couldn't get any news at all from him, or from my younger brother, who graduated while I was still in advance, and he became a tail gunner to B-24. And a strange thing happened. While I was getting ready to make the Rhine crossing in the glider, I was rechecking out in the glider at Tours, France, which is about central France. We had made a simulated drop there. And while I was waiting at the head of the runway for them to hitch up and take us back to Chateau Dun, I was sitting in the glider, of course. In came this B-24 with 2 engines shot out. I didn't learn until Christmas Day that my younger brother was tail gunner in that B-24. And
But he survived.
he survived the war. And of course, my older brother, Thomas, he jumped in on Normandy with the 101st. And he, on the 3rd day, I believe it said, he got wounded by a hand grenade. He was taken prisoner, and he and 3 Polish paratroopers were locked in a room in a chateau. And when the ground forces got pretty close in where they were, the enemy abandoned the house and left 1 guard upstairs and a radio operator downstairs. So they conned the guard into opening the door to let him take out a man who had died. One of the troopers had died. He was seriously wounded when he put him in there. Anyway, when he opened the door, they jumped him. And they jumped in and they took the radio operator off. And they hung a white flag, a white sheet out the window so that our troops would know that friendly troops were in there.
But you didn't know this story until after the war.
No, I didn't.
You all were really close by.
But we were close by, but we couldn't get in touch with each other.
Yeah.
Everything was restricted.
Now, you were getting ready for this, you checking back out in gliders. You were, you were not at the, what you would call the Rhine crossing drop.
Yeah.
That's
That's
where
what we were checking out.
Montgomery tell us, I mean, he wanted to go across.
He wanted an airborne operation across the Rhine, just north of Wessel.
What's the name of the
Wessel, W-E-S-E-L, Wessel, W-S-E-L. Anyway, it was combined British and American operation. And paratroopers mainly went in from England, but all the glider operations were in from France. And of course, ours was one of the outfits going in with the gliders. And
This was your first combat?
this was the first
Gliders.
real combat where we were getting shot up or died. Anyway, on the way in, as we got closer to the Rhine, we could see these C-47s coming back, and they were all scattered. They were no longer in formation. So I thought, man, it must be rough in there. They're all scattered out. And right before we got to the Rhine, there was a field, probably had been an interceptor field for the Germans. Anyway, there was about a half a dozen C-47s sitting on the ground there. One or two on their bellies, and one was on fire. And there was a British Lancaster bomber cruising up and down this side of the Rhine. He was pulling a Horsa glider. And the Horsa glider is bigger than ours. It's all plywood.
Now, that was British.
British, right. Anyway, he tagged on behind us. The minute we crossed the Rhine, all hell broke loose. Pom-poms, 88s, rifle fire, and the glider in front of me started taking a hit on the right wingtip. And it was about 3 or 4 feet of his right wing went up in splinters, and we went right on through it. His big right 16-foot aileron came off, and it went flip-flopping up over to the right. I think I had one eye on the aileron and another one on the glider as it peeled off into a diving turn to the left, disappeared beyond under our left wing.
Well, was there any way for anybody to survive a crash like that?
Possible, but I don't know. I don't think it did, because I don't think he was able to get full control of it. I know he was going in at about a 45-degree angle. And if he was able to recover, he was darn lucky.
Well, now, were you just single, the C-47, it was just one glider?
No, we had two gliders behind each.
Okay.
Right. And about 2 minutes after that, we reached our drop zone, and we peeled off. There were 2 columns, 2 C-47s, 4 gliders. And the left column peeled off to the left, the right column peeled off to the right. And the plan was to make 270-degree turns and land. Well, they landed all over the place because they were getting shot at. And, excuse me. We come in in a high-speed turn to the left, and turning on our final at about 150 feet. I looked down our left wing there, and we were pivoting on 3 88 anti-aircraft guns. I thought, man, I could spit on it from here. Crazy thoughts go through your head. You're running a mile a minute, and I think you can't get us from here. We're too low and going too fast. Seconds after that, we plowed it into the field. Both of us pushed the thing
You and your
down.
co-pilot.
Yeah, I was co-pilot, regular glider pilot was in command of it. Anyway, there were gliders in the field already burning that had been hit after they got on the ground. And we stopped short of where the one glider was burning. We jumped out, dived under the glider, and we were laying over there, and I guess in kind of a stupor, because there was so much noise from the explosions and the activity going on. I looked over at the airport. We were carrying a Jeep, and a major, his aide, and command radio equipment. And he was laying next to me, and I thought,
And were these airborne troops?
Yeah.
17th?
17th Airborne, yeah. Anyway, I told him, I said, man, we're going to be killed just laying here because the darn mortars were landing all around us. And the 88s, you could hear the mortar coming. It sounded like a bunch of quail taking off from the field as it went by. And I told myself, I said, don't worry about that one, it's going by. Anyway, you couldn't hear the 88s coming. They were just a sudden blast, and you'd feel it in your chest, you'd feel it concussion. And your ears would ring. You couldn't hardly hear anything because your ears got numb. Anyway, I told the Major, I said, if I'm going to get killed, I might as well be doing something, not playing here. And that it kind of snapped him out of his stupor, and we jumped up, and the corporal jumped in the glider. He handed out the props, and we put them up under the tail, with the tail up, put them under there. He got in the Jeep and he started forward. Now, the idea was the Jeep would go forward and a cable attached to the rear of the Jeep up to the nose of the glider. As it went forward, it was supposed to pick the nose up. Well, the nose got about shoulder high up, and the Jeep front wheels were just about out of the glider. And it got hung up there. And while he was gunning and trying to get it out, the props fell out of the back and the tail came back down. And about that time, the corporal was wanting to get out of that glider. And I stuck my head in the door, and I saw right away what was wrong. There's a long bar with a cable attached to it and an O-ring, and it's supposed to slide along the bar. And when the glider front was up, it would flip and act as a brake so the front of the glider wouldn't fall down on the Jeep. Anyway, he got it out, and I was holding the tail up. It was easy to pick up at this time because the weight had shifted forward from the glider. And while I'm holding it up there, I'm thinking, damn, if I get hit, it'll just bounce off. That's how tight my gut felt at that time. Anyway, the Major jumps in the Jeep and they take off down the field, about 20, 30 yards down the field to another glider. Well, I hit the ground and tried to relax a minute to get my bearings. And I started to a glider that had stopped to the left of ours about 20, 30 yards. And I got within about 10 yards from it, and it got hit, and it caught fire. I laid there watching the fabric burn off, which quickly burned off, and the tires were burning, the plywood floor was burning. Then I saw what was in the glider. It was loaded with ammunition, and the flames were starting to leak up the sides of the boxes. About 2 or 3 small arms popped off. I said, man, let me get away from here. I looked back at my glider, and it's sitting there with the front end wide open, like a big bird with its mouth open. I thought, well, they're not going to zero in on an empty glider. Maybe that's the safest place to be right now. I couldn't get away from it. On the southeast corner of the field it landed in was a great big brick farmhouse with a tile roof. And I knew they were in there, and they were shooting at us from in the house there. There was too much open space to get from the glider to the house. So I ran back and I jumped back under the glider and put my head up against the inside of the left wheel. A minute or two after that, one of my tent mates, Lieutenant Allen, came sliding up there, and he put his head against the wheel on the other side, the wheel that I was on. And he didn't say a word, but he had a silly looking grin on his face. I guess he was speechless like me. Anyway, a bullet hit the hubcap on his side, and it chipped off a piece of aluminum that embedded right in the middle of his head. For a minute, I thought he'd been shot, but he put his finger up there and he pulled out a little piece of aluminum that had chipped off the wheel when the bullet hit him. I started to fire at the house. I figured we shoot at the windows. That'll keep them from standing up and taking careful aim at us. I got off about 3 shots and somebody hollered, "Don't shoot, you're drawing fire." I said, "Man, I've been drawing fire since the minute I crossed the line." I told Alan, I said, "Alan, we got to get away from here before they pick us off." So we started up to the northwest side of the field where a big milk barn was. Big brick milk barn and a concrete cooler building right next to it. I thought, we can get to there, we can get out of the line of fire from this house. So we started up and we hit the ground a time or two because they were shooting at us. But we made it to the barn, and about time it got down, squirmed down on the ground good, one of the troopers got hit with a bullet, and it hit him in the right upper chest here, and he fell just a couple of yards from me. And of course, he was in a line of fire, and I was next to the barn, and I could count his heartbeat as his blood was kind of pumping up through his shirt. I thought, man, I guess I got to do something. They had given us, and told us before we left, don't use your medical kit on somebody else because you may need it yourself. But I couldn't stand that anyway. I got the medical compress out, and I was fixing to get up and go when Lieutenant Graham was laying next to me. He said, "Give it to me." He took it, and he squirmed down out there, and he ripped his shoulder, and then he put that compress under his shirt. But about that time, he got shot in the leg, on the right side.
The same guy that got shot in the shoulder? Or was that?
No, that was Lieutenant Graham, the one who went out to put the compress on him. He got hit in the leg, and he squirmed on back. But luckily, he had a K-ration kit in that side pocket, and the bullet hit that hard candy bar. You had a candy bar in there, you couldn't chew it, or all you could just gnaw on it. It was that hard. Anyway, it hit that candy bar and it broke into several pieces.
Saved his life, probably.
Saved his leg, probably, yeah.
What happened to the soldier?
A few minutes after that, a couple medics arrived on scene. They picked him up and took him in the barn.
Okay.
They were starting to set up a aid station in the barn.
Tell us what happened to the major that got in the Jeep and
He got
his corporal.
He got killed just a few minutes after we got the Jeep up. I don't know whether it was a bullet or whether it was some shrapnel from the mortars or anything. Anyway, the corporal survived, and he was crying like a kid. His cheeks were just wet with tears. Anyway, he went on up to the aid station, up to the barn. He didn't stop there. Of course, the major was dead. He didn't survive. But,
and you were in Germany at this time?
oh, yeah. We were in our landing zone.
And this was in early 1945? Oh.
No, this was in November.
44? It was before the Bulge?
No, this was after the Bulge. Yeah,
Okay.
It was in spring of 45. Right across it, right.
And you on what you call perimeter defense? Is it?
Yeah.
You,
We were fixing to dig in there behind the barn, and a high-ranking British officer came up and said he had 2 prisoners with him, and he had about a squad of troopers. He said, "Your men can't dig in here." He said, "You're on perimeter defense. Find your CP and report in." And I looked at Alan, and Alan looked CP is. So he had some charts, and we got them out and we checked them. And we were I guess about a mile from a main north-south highway. And where we were at the farm, there was an access road led to the highway. So we said, we go down that access road, get on the highway and head south, and our CP would be on the left, about 2 or 3 miles down.
Now, the CP is a command post.
Command post.
Somebody might not know what that
Yeah,
means.
that was command post for our group. Anyway, we started down this access road and we made a right-hand bend around a patch of woods. And right there was a firefight going on in front of it, small arms fire. And we were approaching cautiously, of course. And when we rounded the bend there was 2 big Clydesdale horses that they had got shot, and one of them died laying down, one died sitting up. And the look in that horse's eyes really reflected all the horror that was going on in that strip of land at that time. We kept going down the access road, and this firefight seemed to drift off to the left a little bit, right before we broke out on the main north-south highway. When we broke out there, we were right in front of a great big stone church, and the Germans were using it as a hospital. It reminded me of the film of Atlanta, where the soldiers were laying on the side of the road, row and row, and on the steps and up the veranda, and as far down as you could see into the church, the wounded and dead soldiers. Well, we didn't know what to do.
Most of these were Germans.
Yeah, I expect most all of them were German. Anyway, about that time, this airborne trooper officer and his squad came out of the woods. He had one wounded and he had several prisoners. The one that was wounded said, "Hey, Yank, you got a cigarette?" And then I had a pack of cigarettes in my K-ration kit, you know, you get when you leave. And I didn't smoke, so I gave it to her. And then his officer says, "Mind your manners, Tommy." And he popped to and saluted. I thought, man, what time did you salute? Anyway, we checked our position there and we started down the main road towards our CP. We had gone a short piece and we came to looked like a bar room or nightclub of some kind. It had big windows all across the front of it, and they were all shot out. There was a Jeep alongside the building, so we approached cautiously, and we went inside. There was an airborne major and about a squad of troopers in there with him. So I sat down on the floor and got a bottle of beer. I guess I looked pretty sad because I was all sweaty and dirty and messed up. Anyway, I took a couple of swigs off the beer. I said, "No, I don't want this. I want to be alert. I don't want to be fogged up with booze." We checked our position again. He had a map on the table there. And then he said he wanted to send a scout down the road that we could go with him because he was going in the direction of our CP. So we got on the Jeep, about 6 of us, started down the road, and we come to a place where there was a wood frame house on the right of the road, and there was a picket fence in front of it, and there were 2 troopers squatted down behind the fence, and 1 dead trooper inside. And a minute after that, we heard a shot ring out from inside, and a trooper came out waving a swastika band. He said, "That one won't shoot anymore." Okay, we jumped on the Jeep and we started down the road again, and we were receiving fire on wooded area to our right, so we pulled to a stop and jumped in the ditch. And we all opened up on the wooded area. We waited a few minutes and didn't get any more return fire, so we jumped up on the Jeep and started down the road again. In a little bit, we came to our command post, which is across the road and across the railroad track. And they assigned us a spot almost in the middle of the field. And Alan and I dug our foxhole at right angles. We figured we could cover each other's back. And we were still receiving mortar and air and 88 fire, but mostly 88 fire. I guess we were moved out of range of some of the mortars. That night, the enemy decided, I guess, they'd counterattack. So they come across the Giselle River, canal, whatever it was, which was close by where our CP was. Anyway, they broke out of the woods with 2 tanks, and they estimated about 100 infantrymen with the tanks. And they were equipped with what you call burp guns. That's a rapid firing machine gun, hand operated. And they were headed our way. They were still about 50 yards down the field. And I think, man, what am I going to do with this carbine? Just like a pea shooter against a tank. But luckily, one of the glider pilots had a bazooka. And he fired the bazooka at the first tank, and he hit the track, and it spun around and caught fire. The second tank decided he didn't want to take chances against the bazooka, so he backed up and run over the flight wagon that he was pulling behind and backed off back into the woods. Anyway, the next morning, they counted 85 enemy casualties in front of the
That would be pretty good.
guy in the Jeep, yeah.
Well, was that called the Battle of Burp Gun
That was
Corners?
later written up as the Battle of Brook Gun Corners, where a contingent of flying officers knocked out a tank. The man that, Jello, the man that hit the tank, he got a special award, Distinguished Cross or something, I don't remember what it was. Anyway, most of the others did get a Bronze Star. I had an Air Medal and 3 Bronze Stars, and 1 Bronze Arrowhead, which was an award for being in a spearhead of an invasion. The Rhine crossing was an invasion of Germany and stuff.
Well, was that when when did you see the V-2 rocket that came over?
The next day.
Okay.
The next night, 2 twin-engine German bombers made a run at us, and they came right slam over my foxhole. And I told
That was at night?
Yeah, it was at night. And I told Alan, I said, next time if he comes around again, I'm going to be flat on my back and full automatic with that carbine. I didn't get a chance to, because Graham, the one that the late one, he had just dug a slip trench, just deep enough for him to lay in. And when that first bomb, a series of bombs went off, they weren't airbursts, they would explode in the air, shot on the ground with shrapnel. He said, Cass, can I get in there with you? I said, yeah, man, come on. So I couldn't take a shot because he was on top of me. Anyway, it come over the second time strafing. And when it came over strafing, it got hit. And it slid into the ground, it bellied in, and it slid into the wooded area down where the tanks had come out. The next morning, the troopers down on that end checked the plane, and the pilot, somebody had come, he was trapped in there, and somebody had come up through the night and put a slug in his head and killed him. Anyway, one of the crew survived, yeah. So, anyway, the following day then, I heard this boom sound, a rumbling, explosive sort of sound. I thought, what the hell now? I was getting nervous again. I looked to the right where the sound came from, and I saw a couple of donut-shaped rings in the sky. Right above it, it looked like a telephone pole going up. This was a V-2. I don't know if it was headed for England, and it probably was. But about 15 minutes later, two British Typhoons came by, and they made rocket runs on the launch site. We couldn't see the launch site because it was too far, and it was rolling country. You couldn't see it unless you were in the air. Anyway, they made two rocket runs at the site, and one of them got hit on the second run, and he pulled up into a high chandelle to the right, bailed out, and landed in a field just north of where we were. He said that they knocked out the site. It wouldn't launch any more rockets. About that time, I was thinking, I've had enough of this foxhole. I want to get back to Chateau Dartmouth. And sure enough, that day, a British tank appeared down the road, about 50 yards down the road. That evening, we were relieved. We walked back out from there, and we picked up some liberated or captured German prisoners, and we marched with them back to the river. And we got across the river, and we had our first hot meal in 3 days. And they trucked us on up into Holland. And our planes from Chateau Dun came in and picked us up in Holland, carried us back to Chateau Dun. And when we were circling to land, I looked down there, and along the runway were gliders all lined up for another mission. I thought, oh no, not again. But they were lined up. They were going to make a mission to liberate a POW camp. But before they pulled off the operation, the ground forces had liberated the camp. So from then on, our duties were to keep the forward tank carriers, tanks supplied from the air, which we did. We continued that on until the end of the war. We had some accidents, and we had, now and then, we lost a plane. There was one particular, this didn't happen on the Rhine thing, but one thing sticks out in my mind was that Joe Fry, he was a pilot like myself. He was flying C-47 on the Holland mission.
He was on the odd end.
His ship got hit. They got their troopers out, and the co-pilot got burned real bad in the face and hands. Wiseman was his name, he was Jewish boy. And he got out, but like I say, he got badly burned in the face and hands. Well, Joe, the first pilot, instead of running back through the cabin, he went up over the top, out the hatch on top, and slid off. And he was down pretty low at that time. Anyway, he hit the tail of the airplane, and his chute opened and went up over the tail of the airplane. And then the airplane exploded, and when it did, it threw him off the tail, and his chute opened just before he hit the ground. He survived. We had another
The guy that was buried, he survived too?
Yeah, he did, but he was disfigured. When he came from the hospital, his face was just one big scar, and his ears were just little nubs, and his nose looked like a beak on a hawk. But anyway, they sent him back to the States for reconstruction surgery. Another fellow, his airplane got shot up pretty bad, and they were losing altitude, and they had dropped their troopers. Anyway, he lost elevator control, and when he did, his crew would run to the tail of the section, the airplane, the tail section, the nose would come up, then they'd run to the front, the nose would go down. And they kept that up until they got down, or I guess it must have been just a couple 100 feet off the ground. And he ordered all the crew members to bail out. And about that time, a shell came up on the cockpit under his seat, and it blew him completely out of the airplane. And he was, I guess he must have been probably 100 feet off the ground, yeah. Anyway, he fell in the Moose River. And he said he was semi-conscious, and there was a German tank running along the bank of the river, and it stopped, and they fished him out of the river. They put him up on the tank, and they started up the road, and a T-47 come along making a strafing run. He saw it coming, so he rolled off the tank into the ditch. T-47 made one pass and went on to another target. Anyway, a Dutch couple, we were trying to wipe the dirt off his face and whatnot, and the tank came back, and they pleaded with the German to let them take care of him. He's dying anyway. And they said, nah, and they put him back on the tank and went on up the road. They dumped him off at a big barn where they had a bunch of other prisoners there. He survived, but he spent the rest of the war in camp.
The war was winding down anyway, but
The Holland Mission, then Bastogne, then the Rhine Crossing.
the Rhine crossing was the last big
Yeah, the
glide
Holland.
off.
Yeah,
Those were the three big
the
glide
big
off,
operations. Yeah.
big operations involving
Yeah.
the
See,
glide.
they had an operation in Africa which wasn't very successful, and they went into Sicily, and they had some tremendous losses of gliders in the Sicily operation because they released them over the water at night, and some of them landed in the water, some of them just crash landed on the ground. And on top of that, they used the Navy as an IP in coming in from Africa.
What's an IP?
That's an initial point where you reach that point, then you make a beeline to your drop zone from there. Anyway, they used the Navy ships on the Mediterranean as their IP. And the Navy shot down 25 C-47s.
Don't you remember Gerard too?
That was rough. Anyway, after all that was over, we were mostly hauling liberated prisoners out of Germany and taking them to Paris, where they could be processed and returned home. Then I was scheduled to go to the Pacific, and we checked out in C-46s. Now the C-46s, they took a beating. 65 C-46s made the Rhine crossing, and 35 were shot down on that one mission. Anyway, we checked out in the C-46s, and we flew them back to the States by way of Scotland, Iceland, Labrador, and Greenland, and Labrador, and down to Massachusetts. They took our planes to California, and they fitted them out with cabin tanks so that we could fly to Okinawa. But while we were on leave, they dropped the bomb, so we didn't go. I got as far as down.
That ended your, then you came back to Bainbridge and that's when you got married?
Not quite. I stayed in the services on active duty for another year after the war. Actually, I got separated on January of 47. And I was having back problems, you know, when I made that belly landing in France. I ruptured discs in my neck, middle back, and lower back. And when I went to a VA hospital in the States after I got back, they put me in traction and had a steel brace made from my butt to my head, which I stayed in about 30 days, something like that.
And you in the reserves for a while?
Yeah, yeah. I chose to stay in the reserve as long as they had me, which I stayed in until I couldn't pass the physical anymore, so I transferred to a retired reserve.
But they didn't call you up during Korea or anything?
No.
John, you've had a wonderful experience, and on behalf of our country, we want to thank you for what you did and for coming with us this afternoon and recording your adventures, and we thank you for everything.
I appreciate it.
And at the end of this tape,